For the first time in a long time, I, who trained myself so well to speak, am fighting for words. I feel it very sharply that with the changing of the new year, 2021, a transformation within me has begun. At first I assumed it was some mild depression coming back, or something like the usual downswings of mood. But it is something more profound. Now that we have March, I feel like I have entered a cocoon. You know, like some insects put themselves in cocoons and become moths or butterflies or whatever. And I'm as ignorant as what I will be if I come out of the cocoon as the worm is before. Or maybe they do know and we just don't know that they know. Just that I don't. I have this profound feeling that some points of view, some general perspective on the world are about to change. That some things with a finality I will let go, and other things will grow. I start to have some hints, though they may be wrong. I was my entire life always in support of science and technology. And for the first time in my entire life, I'm starting to doubt both. It is more like a very distant impression at the horizon of my consciousness that may be transforming the world, or the way we look at the world, into numbers, figures, equations. In short, mathematizing the world, if that is a word, made us powerful, but brought us to the brink of doom. I know for people who see themselves surrounded by emotional madmen of all sorts and kinds, political, religious, and whatever, the idea that to attack the seemingly only island of safety, reason, logic, science, seems like madness. And I am far from turning to their side. However, the doubt that is beginning to nag me is, where did the calamity where we find ourselves in actually begin? And I start to suspect more intuitively than I have reasons that it is this triumph of reason over belief, of ratio over mythology, shall I call it, that is not adequate in wording at all. There are essentially two ways to look at the world, if we could bring them down to two very inadequate terms, it is the scientific and the magic or animistic view. Or the scientific perspective, everything is dead, is just an assortment of things, machinations, mechanisms, numbers, equations, laws of physics, of biology, of chemistry. The love itself is just a function of electricity in the brain and chemistry in the body. It is essentially the way where all things living are transformed into things which are dead. Now, magic, in the sense of the mystical view, is the reverse. It is seeing everything as conscious and alive. The trees, the rocks, the river, the sky and the stars. Everything is mystical. Feelings, thinking, everything has a soul. And one side triumphed and destroyed the other. The materialistic, scientific, the path of death has triumphed over the path of life. And through this bargain, we have achieved power beyond imagination. And who could doubt this? We have created machines to heal, chemistries and means to heal people from afflictions which were uncurable in the time before. We can implant artificial organs into our bodies. The people before were doomed to die from simple illnesses like wet air and died from pneumonia. It's one of the more difficult English words for me as a foreigner. Who could doubt the benefits of science? Who am I to cast the world back into the time before? But I wonder if it was not a devil's bargain. You know, like literally. There is this story in the temptation of Jesus of Galilee, where he is in the desert and the devil appears in tempting him. And he says, all those kingdoms of the world I shall give you, if only you kneel before me. I am not a Christian or a Galilean, and I do not share much of the morality that the New Testament is writing. But spiritual wisdom is found in many pathways. And I said before that if you look at the teachings of Plato or Seneca, there are parts which are not so far away from some of the teachings of the New Testament. Because I believe there is an ultimate true truth behind all the different systems. Only that some are closer to it and some are less close. In the operas of Richard Wagner, the German composer, there is always one struggle, with the exception, I think, of one opera, that is the duality of love and power. And the message in various ways of his stories in his operas is always the same message, with, I think, the only exception is the master singers. That's about something else, and it's the only funny opera. All others are about the conflict between power and love. And it is culminating in his great work, The Ring of the Nibelung. In the first scene, there is the Rhine maidens, spirits of nature. It is the morning, the sun rises into the water, and they're dancing and frolicking and have a good time, and think of nothing but their play. And then Alberich arrives, a dwarf, if you want, and he in vain tries to find the love or affection of the three Rhine maidens, and then the Rhine gold appears, shining in the sun, beautiful to behold. And the Rhine maidens explain to Alberich that if someone would use that gold and fashion a ring of power, he would be the master of the world. But to be able to forge a ring of this gold, one has to give up and forswear love. That is where the tragedy begins, because they in their mindset cannot imagine that anyone would do that. But Alberich, hurt by the rejection, curses love and forges the ring to dominate the world. That is the basic conflict of all his operas, that you can either follow the principle of love or the principle of power, but they are mutually exclusive. I'm not certain if that is true. Maybe you can choose from case to case. But I believe, and it is ironic quoting again, I think it is the New Testament, or is it the Old? I'm not entirely certain. One cannot be servant of two masters. For one will either love the one and hate the other, or the other way around. And we can speak of balance and seeing life from different angles, and it is wise to try to do so. But in our heart of hearts we have an identity, a nature. And that follows either one principle or the other. Even if you say you follow the principle of balance, you follow the principle of balance, not another. The reality is that humanity as it is now on the apex of technology and information has put itself on the brink of doom. That is the reality that I see in front of me. Now I may be mistaken. Calamities came and went away in human history. There were 2 world wars, or in a time of the 30 Years' War in the 17th century, people believed it was the end of the world. So I'm not the first to believe that. But there is a difference, I believe. And that is this saying that at some point quantity causes a change of quality. And I believe we are at such a crossroad. Our technological means are not just bigger in numbers, they are different in quality. Just to take one example that is deeply unsettling me for quite a number of years, and that is our power to unlock genetics. All that we are, in the material sense at least, is determined by our genes, the genetic code. Now imagine, if you will, humanity would finally understand the entirety about genes, and someone would find means to alter the genetic setup of other people against their knowledge and a will. Is that a power that we truly want humanity to wield? For dropping bombs, using guns, like destruction was made in the 2 world wars. Yes, the people who died then were irreversibly dead. But all that was destroyed in such world wars, as tremendous and powerful and destructive as they were, new things could be built thereafter. Many of the buildings destroyed thereafter were built just in our lifetime. But imagine if someone cracks the genetic code and finds a way to alter genes, genetic makeup of people. That is one of those things that could create an unreversible calamity. And there are things which are in practice reversible, but not in likelihood. For instance, I believe that the internet, with all the benefits that it brought, is an extremely dangerous tool, not in itself, but because we are not wise enough by far to deal with the unfiltered bombardment of information it brought to us. Now the problem is science always marches ahead. Once it was unleashed in modernity, once the shackles of religion and belief were destroyed, and all the taboos were undone, for a long time life became better for many people. But there is a price to pay. We come to the point where we may cause irreversible changes to ourselves as human beings, as well as to the planet, which, as far as we know, is the only place where life exists, unsentient life. There may be other life forms, there may be other sentient life forms, but as far as we know, there is not. So we who are part of life and part of sentient life are at the actual risk for the first time in humanity having the means to destroy both forever and return the cosmos back into a place of dead silence. And no religious crusade and no believing fanaticism would be able to manage that. Only science. This is not probably that science itself is to blame. It is just maybe that we human beings are not ready to lead the world through such means, to have been given such powerful tools into our hands in the same way that you wouldn't give a gun into the hand of a 5-year-old child. there may be irreversible changes, of a darkening of this world that can never ever be undone. That is what I feared is the prospect of this era. And if that is true, which I do not know, it is just a perspective far away on the horizon of my thought, but just speculating it if it were so. Then is the moral conclusion not that for the sake of the survival of humanity and the planet, a catastrophe must happen that destroys our current civilization? For if civilization itself is the danger to destroy life itself in its entirety, then with all the benefit that it brought, like having better dentists, something which I'm a parent quite fond of, and all the other things that it brought, warm water in our homes, heating in the winter, an unending number of technological marvels and blessings. But if the price of having such means that we destroy the world, then is the question not that this civilization itself is the threat instead of the salvation? And again, not because it is bad in itself, but because we are not mentally or spiritually capable to handle it responsibly. And how are the odds? Just going back to the genetic manipulation thing. Let's say all the nations of the West and many other countries agree on a moral code to say we will create no super soldiers, like genetic people who are so overpowering that they can enslave the entirety of the world. It needs just one small nation to betray that agreement, and they will become masters of everyone else. And they could genetically alter humanity into blind, obedient slave mentality, out of which we could never ever break out again. Because then we would be fabricated to never question, to never doubt, to never disobey. Any genetic system of free thinking would just be taken out of our genetic code. Just as an example. And given we are on the brink of having such powerful tools eventually, all human history teaches us that means that are invented always and without exception at some points are used. And this perspective terrifies me to the depths of my soul. When we transform the world into figures and numbers, equations and mechanisms, we achieve the ring of power of Alberich, the ring of power of Sauron, to govern the world with powers beyond imagination. But like the 9 Nazgûl were once powerful kings, we sold away our soul in the bargain, I suppose. all my scientific faith, my faith in the future, in making life better for people through modern medicine, through modern technology, is the one desire to make life better for all those who are suffering. It is the one soul fighting against the other which warns me, yes, but in this deal are we not destroying the world just around us now? The skeptic scientist tells me there are no times of destiny. There is no destiny. Life is just forever changing, and sometimes it goes up and sometimes it goes down. But the shaman within me says no. There are times of prophecy, times of destiny, where a new cause for people is set irreversibly so. For the first time in my life, the scientist and the shaman, which I am both, are at war with another. Which side is more right? That is what happens inside the cocoon. Will something third be born out of it? Will one side defeat the other? For the first time in my life I am aware of a transformation within myself, and I have not the slightest clue where it will lead me. And I even know that I must let go, even trying to control it. Maybe in 4 weeks I will wake up out of the cocoon, and all the fears will have gone, and all will return to the normalcy of my character as it was before, and all the beliefs of a great change within me reveal themselves as a great self-delusion. Or I simply fall back to the old perspectives out of laziness or cowardness. I do not know. But far away on the fringes of what I can sense, there is a great change coming. Both to the world, and dependently or independently, similarly or very differently, to myself as well. Like a great leap in the darkness. And from conversations with other people, I know that there are other people in similar processes just right now. Something is going on. The believers of light and salvation believe it is the last fight of the darkness before the great golden age of enlightenment. Unfortunately, these people say this for quite a long time, and it has not transpired at all. The doomsayers say that it is the end of the world, but they too have said this for quite a long time, and that too did not transpire. So I'm not inclined to believe either side as it is right now. But what other ways could there be? than the one or the other? Is balance a possibility? Can we revive to a degree our mystical view on the world without forsaking science entirely? And can we in turn follow a part of the scientific understandings and methods, but give up some of the more dangerous? We are 8 billion people. How likely is it that all these 8 billion people will keep such an agreement? So the alternative again is destruction of the civilization that is about to destroy the world. And if there is an alternative, I do not yet see it. And that deeply, deeply unsettles me. I speak this because I am speaking to all the spiritual seekers out there. Listen into your own heart what it tells you about this, what I told you. Does it tell you something? Are you as much stumbling in the dark as I am? Have you seen in the great patterns of destiny what I am ignorant of? Clinging to the hope of the great era of enlightenment, or clinging to the certainty of doom, both seem the easy ways to me right now. But what else can come out of it? What would I advise people who ask me? What would I answer people who question me? I always held it as my moral code that I should act that everything depended on my action. Not out of hubris, but because I wanted to face all my actions in such a way that I would act responsibly. But to whom am I responsible more? To humanity or to life itself? And if those two became anathema, would I be able to choose a side? Being part of a side. There are no answers tonight, I know this. Like a wolf, I howl into the night to the moon, lonely, hoping someone howls back and makes me wiser. That is all.